reactive? What are the things that trigger me, that pull me out of balance? When do I know that my battery is being depleted? When do I know that my executive functionings of my brain, because I'm doing all this work, just like your cell phone, right? If I use my cell phone, the battery's going to die, and that's okay. But we have to recharge it, and we have a charger with us wherever we go. But when I'm using my brain, right, when I'm using this body, there's signs that show me when my body's depleted. But we have to strengthen that connection so I can feel that shift at the subtlest level. When I'm starting to, before I am actually reactive to my coworkers, I can sense, oh, my breathing pattern is changing, right? Before I get that foggy eye, that foggy head where I can't remember things that I do every single day, I can begin to sense that the second I wake up, because there are cues that if we're able to listen to.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Hey everybody, thank you so much for being here with me at the Warriors at Work show. So we're talking about balancing the lightness and darkness of our lives with two of the coolest people ever, the KYDS founders, Rodney Salomon and Mychal Mills. So why this conversation? Why now? Well, this conversation is a part of my month-long focus. I'm bringing to you exactly what we all need right now, and that is lightness, light workers, light conversation. But in order to have that conversation, you have to understand the dark sides, and we all have both. We need emotional, energetic, and physical healing, all of us. And in this conversation, you're going to hear from two of the most soulful, energetically deep, and evolved people I know. The founders of Conscious Youth Development and Service, or KYDS, Rodney Salomon and Mychal Mills. They do this critically important work every day with students, teachers, administrators, parents, and leaders. And I ask that they come into a conversation with me to talk about our light and dark sides and how we can use that wisdom from all sides of ourselves to have the full and expansive life we all seek, inside and outside the office. For all my warriors who are struggling, or maybe you're sitting with the big questions about yourself and your life right now, this conversation is for you. Welcome, Mychal and Rodney. Thank you so much for being here with me. I could not think of two better people to have a conversation about lightness and darkness than the two of you, given this incredible work you are doing every single day. So where I want to start is I want you to tell us how you define lightness and darkness.
You want to go first, Brother Mike? I'll be, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, lightness and darkness is for me the yin and yang. It's a balance of two worlds that come together. And I know there's an over focus and the stimulus on the lightness. I want everything to be light and peaches and cream and things of that sort. But to me, they come together in a beautiful world. When I go outside at night and I see the stars, I see the moon, that is the balance. When I wake during the day and I see the sun, I see the beautiful sky, that is beauty to me. And both of those worlds, also beauties, come together in a harmonious way. So when we look at the darkness, we look at the light, we can look at good and bad, but those are just polarities of the same thing. It's the same energy and it's in a different form, but our mind sees the separateness of them both, but I see a oneness, the in-between, of the light and the dark, and understanding that darkness creates the light and the light creates the darkness, so I see them as very much relatives in the same family, and how they all come together in a harmonious way.
Rodney, what would you add?
Yeah, I'll just kind of echo what Brother Mike was saying. You know, this the polarities they speak about, like in some of the natural laws, but more making it from a storytelling perspective. There's this indigenous story that they share about these two wolves we all have inside of us. One is filled with light, the love, the peace, the harmony, the compassion, and all the things that bring that feeling of joy to ourselves. And there's the other wolf that's filled with darkness, full of pain, hurt, anger, and despair. And every day these wolves are battling each other. And at the end of the story, it speaks about, you know, we all have that battle inside of us, and which one is going to ultimately win that battle. And they say it's whatever one you feed more. But I'm going to take it a step further and realize it's not a battle where there's ever going to be a winner. You know, in the ancient Kemetic or Egyptian philosophy, they speak about this battle of your lower nature, the stuff that pulls you into your ego, the lust, the greed that separates you from people, and your higher nature, the one that sees yourself no longer as separate, that sees yourself connected as one, and really brings forth the higher qualities of how we express ourselves. But it tells you that we never defeat our lower nature. Our darkness supports our light becoming brighter, and our light helps us understand the shadows a little bit more so that we could become whole. And that's kind of like that dance of the yin and yang, where our pain is not anything bad or good, and the joy and light is not anything bad or good. They're experiences that help us understand who we are in our totality, and we have to embrace both of them. If that resonates with you.
Yeah, totality is a word that I think is something that we don't talk very much about, but I think how you just characterize that's really, really important. We're not one or the other, we're both. Mm-hmm. And it's embracing the both. And when I think about the two of you, like in my book, you are two of the most powerful, soulful teachers who walk their talk. You live to the best of your ability what it is you practice and what it is you teach. Tell us right now what you're seeing in the world.
I'll say what we're seeing is what kind of me and Mike experienced back in 2012, 2013. We realized, like, even myself, I was carrying this mask of what I wanted the world to perceive me as, what society thought I should be. And it was battling between the essence of who I actually was and what I wanted to express within myself. And I feel with the pandemic and everyone being in lockdown and shutdown is we finally were all either we chose to or were forced to see our shadow side. And for us who are in the adult range, who are probably say above the millennials, they grew up in a time where, you know, we just sucked it up. You know, we just dealt with whatever we had, and it's kind of just like sweeping the dirt underneath the rug. But over time, it's eventually going to accumulate, and that mess is not going to be something you can just sweep underneath. So what we're seeing is the pain body finally getting space to express itself. Now, with the flip side of that is what leads to it for those folks who don't have the proper skills to cope, the proper skills to actually integrate those experiences. We're seeing a lot of mental health issues. We're seeing a lot more anxiety, a lot more stress, depression, even the suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts are amplifying, because these are things that we always felt was inside people's hearts that we just learned to go to the club, go to the sports event, go to the concert. I'm not saying those are good or bad, but that just helps us continue to live our life, to push through all that is happening. But now this wound of all of our pain collectively is saying, hey, we need some care. We need some nurturing. And that is going to be a battle that's not always going to be easy for all folks to go back and forth with. So that's kind of a little taste of what we're kind of seeing, what I'm seeing.
Mychal, how do you both play into that in terms of giving the care and the feeding, but also the space for people to explore this?
Yeah, and I just want to create a little thread based on the first question to what we're talking about now is for those who will see the vision, those will see like, okay, this is something new. You know, whereas Ra and I, we saw this as something as a continuous thread of pain bodies that weren't expressed. You know, so if you're driving your car and something happens under the hood and you just think this is a new issue, two weeks later, you're driving that same car, something under that hood is still messed up, you know, and it finally breaks down. You know, that's not a different issue. It's the same issue. We just didn't look under the hood. and we can't look at the outer and think we're going to heal from the outer. I can look at systemic changes in society, and I can look for the next election and the protests and things of that sort, but if I'm not looking under the hood, looking within myself, those pain bodies have been there long before the pandemic. Now we're just watching them and seeing them, come out in society, and there's cameras. We're in a digital age where we're able to capture a lot of this. It's going to be a misconception that this is new.
When you say pain body not expressed, my brain goes immediately to, like, I get what that is, but I'm imagining the two of you, whether you're talking to students, whether you're talking to administration, or you're talking to parents, or you're talking to leaders. Pain is a scary word. And a lot of us will avoid it if we think that there is a less painful route. How do you get people to embrace that in a way that shows it's a pathway to healing? It's a pathway to your wholeness, to the essence of who you are. How do you do that?
I would say, it is true. And even the other word besides pain body is a trauma, right? Is another word that is just as fearful, and it triggers because what it brings up on the inside is those spaces that we are not trying to connect to. And part of what we do when we do a staff development or workshop is we focus on bringing back the humanness in each other. And we recognize it is learning how to build rapport, build connections, right? How do we break down some of these walls? Like, remember when you're in elementary school or high school, when you have to do a group project with kids that you don't even know, and you get all those weird feelings on the inside where it's like, I don't want to talk to so-and-so, I don't want to be around. So like, we do certain brain games and activities that really just help you come back to the present moment. But for adults especially, it's opening up that inner child space where some folks are so serious, they don't even know what it's like to be playful anymore. So, and especially the older population.
That's me.
Oh, yeah. So
that's me.
We are inner child experts, me and Mychal. So we're playful, we laugh, we put ourselves on the table. But once we get that inner child to start to feel comfortable to play around in the space, and them to bring out even just 1% more joy into the room, then we can have that adult conversation. Then we could speak about the science behind, what is this trauma actually doing to you on a physical, mental, and emotional level? And then we have a lot of different tools that you can utilize, whether it be the deeper tools of the mindfulness, the breath works, the movement, the meditation, or it's just the reflection, the contemplation, these team building exercises that get us to question on a surface level because we recognize it's not always going to be a kumbaya experience. But if we, like Mike said, if we can build a container that you feel safe in when you enter into, we know that we have the ability and capabilities to help you explore just at least 1% more of your shadows than you're typically comfortable with. And that is a way that we have mastered over the 5 years of going into various schools or different organizations of showing them how to do this in real time.
Well, let's talk about some of the modalities, some of the ways in which you're doing this. What can you share with us? I know there's lots of tools in your toolkit.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you the biggest and best tool that we use is our own embodiment before we go into any breath work, any yoga practice, any sound healing, whatever you want to call it. But it's definitely our embodiment, right? When you walk into a space and you paint the room with love, you paint love in every individual's hearts, that is the biggest tool that we can use and bring it into light and existence, right? So it has to start with the source. It has to start with me. I can't give you anything that's not already inside of me. Today's lesson plan when I was in the school today was all about self-love. You asked me for a cup of water and I don't have anything in my cup. I can't give you anything. Right. But if I fill my cup of water, I can give you some of my water. So the biggest thing we bring is our embodiment, right? That energetic practice. Rod said before coming on this call, just talking about getting that practice in. I told you, you asked me if I needed a couple minutes before we started this interview. I took my couple of minutes. That's why I was a couple minutes late. But those are the things we have to do. We have to be selfish to be selfless. right? And so then we open up the space, right? They bought into our energy. They bought into our childlike energy. We're getting with the humor, the jokes, the brain energizers, getting you out of your mind and inside the body. Just feel, just connect to this space within myself, and then we're working on the breath work, several different tools within the breath work that ignite different energies within us and balance our energy, ignite our energy, relax our energy. There's so many breath work tools that we can use. Then we're going into the sound healing, using the harmonics of sound to open up our frequency, to balance and release, right? We're using the movement, somatic movement, and just really helping us connect mind and body and connect back to this space, and changing that physical, because the body keeps a score, right? And if we know that, it's like we have to hit all points, and we have to get out of our minds, because some of the biggest things I see, the challenges, because we'll have with youth or educator come to us time and time again, right? But I can't go back to the same lifestyle that was causing the stress, that was causing the pain bodies, right? So there's a point where I have to unpack some of the things that I've been packing on, all that baggage I've been holding back. I have to unpack some of that, right? And I have to create new layers of that transformation to take place within myself. And, that's the packing, that's the tools I just mentioned, so there's several different tools that we use, but it's the humor, it's the breath work, it's the movement, it's the sound healing. There's so much more, but it's mostly our embodied connection, everyone that we come across.
I'm thinking about all the people that would be watching and or listening to this. These are all men and women in the workplace, whether they're entrepreneurs or they're working in corporate America. We are very much driven by our intellectual horsepower, how we think our way through situations and experiences. And that's society and infrastructures are set up to reward those types of behaviors. And what you're talking about is really tapping into like who we are as human beings and energy that we have here. And we all know this, but it's not necessarily a lot of the language that even you're using is not conversations that you find very often in a business context. So I know you both have worked a lot in businesses. So I would love for you to break down what would it be like to work with you both in a business environment using some of these languages. I know it because I'm used to the two of you and I've seen firsthand the power you both bring to these interactions, but I'd love for you to connect it to a business interaction. How would you approach it?
So I'll paint a simple picture. Like we have this series called Recharging Your Battery, right? And the foundation of it is cultivating and enhancing our self-awareness. That is almost like our alarm system. And I would say folks in the business world have very high levels of self-awareness, but that's kind of knowing it from an internal perspective. What are the things that trigger me, that pull me out of balance? When do I know that my battery is being depleted? When do I know that my executive functionings of my brain, because I'm doing all this work, just like your cell phone, right? If I use my cell phone, the battery is going to die, and that's okay. But we have to recharge it, and we have a charger with us wherever we go. But when I'm using my brain, right, when I'm using this body, there's signs that show me when my body's depleted. But we have to strengthen that connection so I can feel that shift at the subtlest level. When I'm starting to, before I am actually reactive to my coworkers, I can sense, oh, my breathing pattern is changing, right? Before I get that foggy eye, that foggy head where I can't remember things that I do every single day, I could begin to sense that the second I wake up, because there are cues that if we're able to listen to, that I'm going to say this is the part where it's not in our thinking, this is more in our feeling. And you could train that as a skill. You can do body scans. You can tell your mind, hey, what is my left leg doing right now? Do I feel my tailbone against my chair? And in that process, you might have a million thoughts in your head, but there's tools that I can incorporate. I don't have to say mind be silent. I can just say, hey, those thoughts are there. I'm not going to battle with them, but hey, my consciousness is still going to focus on my left leg. And that's the internal battle of self-awareness. And the more I do it, just like when you go to the gym, the muscle gets stronger. And once you have that self-awareness cultivated, then we bring them into tools to help them become more self-regulated. When I'm peaceful, when I'm stressed, when I'm anxious. So the goal here is then we have learned specific breathing techniques that help people, one, just come back into regulation, because 90% of Americans breathe heavily inside of their chest. And when you have those chest breathing, when you have that mouth breathing, all the science will tell you those are things that are going to destroy your body, going to create more anxiety, going to deplete how your nervous system actually supports yourself, because it puts you in a state of fight or flight opposed to being in a state of relaxation.
And I'm gonna jump up in there because I think, it's 2022, right? And, last 20, 30 years, we've been hearing words like social emotional learning. We've been hearing like emotional intelligence become more and more popular, especially in the workplace, but in this new day and age, the paradigms of those old systems are breaking. Right, where a lot of companies and corporations, they're not looking for just the smart leader, they're looking for the heart leader.
That's right.
And they're looking for the individuals who can lead within the heart. And it's just been a basics of even trainings that we've taken along our journey called like True North Leadership, which is from Bill George, and that philosophy of thought, and just like, how can I be more self-aware? How can I show up more authentically in a workplace? Even just the market share of the mind, it's about collaborative intelligence, right? It's about how well we do together, not me versus you, and this is the unification of everything. I can't go any further. We're seeing that because it's the eyes can't go any further, but we, when we work together, we work in collaboration, we work in harmony, our own internal embodiment, as well as the external embodiment of everyone else, of harmony and balance and love, authenticity in the workplace. We're finding that more and more people are productive. They're showing up to work happier. They're showing up to work fuller, and more embodied, and they're able to do a better job, more productive. What Rod said about the mind, it's like, okay, less stress on the mind. I'm able to recall. My accuracy is a lot higher. My PTOs are used in a harmonious way where I'm not just burnt out. I'm running, running away from the job, but I'm just walking away like, okay, I did a good job. Everything is balanced. People are now taking time to take care of themselves, and that's the biggest thing, right? Because we have not taken care of ourselves as society for a long, long time. And how far can you go on your car on E? So we have to refill our own tanks. We have to recharge our own batteries. We have to take that time for self, because it's not just for the job. It's for our families. It's for our communities and the next generation, because they're going to embody everything we say and do and show them. So we have to show that example of how to take care of yourself.
I just took a deep breath when you just talked. I just could feel like that resonates so much truth, what you just said. I was had a conversation with my husband the other night, and I was like, the silver lining to this extraordinary time the last 2 years is many of us, me included, I don't want to go back to the world that I left. I didn't even realize how stressed I was and how often I was fighting my natural needs, my natural inclination for the sake of, fill in the blank. So talk about this lightness and darkness. I thought I was this very light body that was doing all these great things in the world, which I was very productive, but there was a darkness to me that also needed love and care and attention. And so when a lot of that stuff got stripped away, I was faced with like the reality of the world in which I was operating, and to how empty I was and how sad I was and how out of balance I was. So you're speaking such truth. Like I feel such resonance with what you are saying. I'm really, really curious. There's a word that you both use a lot that I love, but I'm always wondering, like, how the heck do you teach compassion? How do you do that?
I love that word because it means so many different things to so many different people. You might hear it in personal relationships. Are you not showing compassion to me? Well, I kind of was showing compassion to you, right? You just can't see compassion because you don't know what compassion is. Compassion in my eyes and in my view and what I've studied and learned is a way of connecting to an individual's pain through empathetic presence, right? And holding that pain, but not taking on that pain. Where you have a lot of people playing empaths and they're just, okay, you're feeling down, I'm going to feel down. Compassion is able to feel on that same level, but to also help you lift and rise out of it, right? And then you add different layers of compassion. I'm just showing you the roots of every problem that you're experiencing, every issue that you're experiencing, in that compassionate presence where I'm reflecting that back to you, but compassion to me is more solution oriented than empathy, right? It's more active and just not just the feeling, but rising above that feeling, rising above that issue, and rising above the suffering that we're experiencing. So compassion is very active, and it likes to get its hands in there, but it's helping to lift individuals out, in a very empathetic way.
Do you think it's teachable? And do you think it's one of the key pathways to our best self?
I'll say this, right? And this is from our indigenous ancestors. The heart is the bridge that brings together your lower nature and your higher nature. So in order for this to be taught for myself, a great framework that helped me transform my heart was learning about the chakra system in the heart center and recognizing the qualities. If you find your heart in a space that is out of balance, that you have to look at the things that, who do I need to forgive, right? What are those things I need to let go of? Where do I need to seek more understanding? Where do I need more patience? What are those things that create my anger? And I think the real teaching of compassion, as Mike said earlier, is our embodiment of compassion first to ourselves. And that will naturally, I don't have to think about being compassionate to you or anybody else because that radiates at a higher level within me. And I had an ex-girlfriend that broke my heart and cheated on me. I had, childhood trauma from my own father not being around as much, my mother not being here. And it's like, I didn't know how all those experiences still affected me 20 plus years later. And the more I spent time in stillness, reflecting, even doing meditations like loving kindness that really helped me centered on those folks that hurt me the most, it allowed for me to find more compassion for myself and sharing that with others. So I do believe it's possible, but I would say probably one of the hardest parts of my journey was opening my heart. But when you do, that's when your higher nature can really begin to hug that shadow part of your being, when you can open that space up.
The other thing that I've learned from you is a term called purification of the ego. Please say more, which I think is probably the most difficult thing in the world. I think I consider myself like a light worker, doing my very best to spread goodness in the world. But in a world that demands productivity and progress and success and accomplishments, I feel like the ego is very present and can be meddlesome. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about purification of the ego.
Oh, man. So I would say, first and foremost, I thought for a long time that this ego character was some dark, negative force that I just wanted to get rid of. But as I came along more knowledge in my own experience, the ego is nothing bad. The ego is how we characterize this individual nature of Rodney Salomon, who I am connected to in this world of existence. I am Rodney. I am a father. I'm a co-founder of a nonprofit organization. I played football in college. All the things that detail who you are, that is the embodiment of your ego. Now, this going into purification, as you go into science and start to realize even us as human beings, we are formed from the explosion of a supernova, that all that explosion creates the material that begins to build worlds. We come from a single point, and you could go even beyond that just in a more or less scientific approach. You start to realize that ego purification is seeing less of, oh, this is all about me, to this is, hey, more about we. And when you begin to dissolve this idea of Rodney Salomon, right? And I begin to expand into this idea of humanity, of the collective consciousness as a oneness, you have to let go of this ego, because I'm not just working my 9 to 5 just to put food on the table for my family. My job and my living is to help all of my family sustain itself. And people thought me and Mike were crazy. It's like, man, like, why are you doing all this for? Because when I look at you, Jeannie, I don't see separation. Although we're on 2 different screens, I know what you are made of and where you came from is the very same substance and essence of where I come from. And the job of purification is me building a stronger bridge and connecting to that collective we stage. But then I drizzle all that essence back into this I of Rodney. But so you may still see Rodney, but inside Rodney's heart, I have more of focusing on my goals, my needs, and everything that's focusing on myself. And I'm doing this in an experiential way that could hopefully share that energy with others. So that's a small way of kind of expressing purification. I know Brother Mike may have some more sugar on top of that as
well. Mike, you got more sugar?
Yeah, a little something. Not nothing too sweet though, but yeah, but it's funny. I liken to a filtration process, right? And there's different stages of that filter that come into place. And, you can have the very basic stage, of just like that 1-step purification, probably like the Brita, or you can have an in-depth, filtration. Yeah. But, we have different stages of the ego, right? It's something we live in. It's not, if I remove the ego, I may not be in existence, in this form, but we have different stages, and Rob mentioned a few of them. We have the I, and I, it's all about I, but then there's a higher form of the I, I can be a good person. I am a good person, and then we move into another stage of the ego, which is the we, and it's all about the we. And then there's a higher and lower form of that as well, and then even beyond that, I am a good person. We are good people. And then there's just good after that, right? And above I and we, it's above the collective. It's a unification process. So the deeper we go into the filtration process, you see more unification between you and everything around you, and maybe that unification is first with other individuals. I'm doing good. I'm doing good community work. I'm doing good within my corporation, my job, whatever it may be, but then I'm seeing a higher existence. Maybe I'm not there thinking about this time, but I'm thinking about the larger time, everything before me, everything after me, as one. And there's a unification that happens. Like Rod said, it's like it's the heart bringing everything back together. It's the bridge of the higher and lower self. So I would ask each individual, as you explore the ego, just think, is this in my higher form or lower form? Because everything in the name of what we're talking about, the light and the darkness, everything has a polarity to it. Is this the plus or the minus? And just asking yourself those questions can help you dive in a little bit deeper, even journaling, about the I, the we, the it, and just like, okay, there's much more to this existence beyond what my mind could see, but there's a higher and lower form, I will say, in every attachment to the ego. But the misconception I will say is like removing the ego, but I do have to exist in this world. So I'm in need the ego to exist, to see separation so I can see the whole. Back to the light and the dark, the yin and yang, they all come together.
Gosh, just even the idea to go from me to we is revolutionary. If the world just started to understand that concept and made steps towards the we, there's so much. That's a whole nother conversation.
Have a whole conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
Whole conversation.
Yes.
I want to shift because I want to talk about the two of you individually as people on this planet. I'd love for you to share something on your dark side that you're working on or you're trying to bring up, or whatever language feels natural for you to express it here.
I'm going to jump in there because it's fresh in my mind and my heart. And, it's definitely family roots. for me over the last year has been family roots, and I was probably in my lower ego saying, I've done that work, I did this and that, I'm good with that, I can meditate for X amount of time and, and release it. But, there's a continuous process that was happening, unraveling there. And it wasn't until I moved home last year, actually around this time, that I realized a lot of things that I'm still working on. This is meditation in the household, right? I'm living with both my parents. My brother came home last year, and it was definitely a unique time. But to see and reflect over the last year, which I did a couple of nights ago, I was like, wow, there's so much beauty that was happening here in the darkness, because I'm not one to lash out. I think a lot of the work I've done over the number of years has helped me in that self-regulation, that self-control, to not lash out, but I'm like, oh, I felt that. Oh, this, yeah, there was one time, it was like a couple months ago, I told my mother, it's like, you know what? This is a little much for me right now. I didn't get a strong enough practice in this morning. I'm just going to go upstairs. It's like, Mom, you're a little much for me right now. I didn't get enough practice in, but that's the work. And I'm just like,
what a visual.
I've never felt so much more life. It's like, oh, but I've never felt
do
so
it while you're pranayama.
Yes, with that feminine side, we're connecting my mother's side, but that's the work I've been doing over the last year, and I've been reflecting on that deeply, and even the other day, I gave my brother a poetry book I wrote years ago, and I was like kind of like screenshot. I didn't want to give it to him at first because I know there's one poem that's specific to him in there, and our relationship's so good right now. It's like I didn't unravel, and and I was like, this is part of your work too. You got to communicate. You got to open up. We got to allow the past to be in the past, but also being able to have conversations about it, and open the space for healing, not just for myself, but for him, So we had a nice, beautiful conversation about it. That was really good. And I was like, wow, and I gave him the book, and then it inspired me to write a revision to that poem, that came out very naturally. And I'm just like, wow, this is the other side. That was the dark, and then Rod knows because I've expressed that poem at open mic years ago, this is the light out of that darkness. And it's definitely family. It's definitely family. And it's a beautiful, beautiful time to be with family and to explore those spaces.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Rodney, how about you?
Oh man, yeah, he beat me to the punch, and I would definitely say, like, as upon reflection and seeing all the experiences that have broken me down, there's still many untangled knots within my own family, and really beginning to see a lot more clear how my relationship with my mother, my father show up in present time, more simply with my own wife, and how, like my mother grew up, like she did everything for me physically, cook, clean, would do all the things. But, she didn't always come to all my games. I could come home and I could tell she knew I was upset, but I could tell she didn't have that emotional ability to console me on that level. But what she would do, there'd be a meal at my door, right? They'd be like, oh, I got food for you, or, I'll clean your room up for you. So I learned how she shared love with me. But at this age of being 34, and wanting to have vulnerable conversations and wanting to be more authentic and really kind of connect on a soul level with my mother, there's a gap. And with my father too, like I see how his own trauma and mental health issues, are starting to degrade him even more over time. Still a great man, but it's like, man, I'm in acceptance where I may never have those vulnerable, heart-centered conversations with my father in the way that my mind perceives, but that teaches me more acceptance. That teaches me more appreciation that I have two sons now, and how I could begin to change the genetic expression that my father and what he had to deal with, and my mother, that stories that I probably may never know. I hear little things from like their family, and I'm like, man, I have compassion. I understand why things are the way that they are, but in my heart, I crave a much more deeper connection. The same way I'm in these school with these kids and talking with these teachers and being able to share my full self, and even with Brother Mike, I'm like, man, I got two brothers, and it's just surface level connections. But at first it was an internal battle of like, why can't it be this way? Where at a deeper level is helping me cultivate more acceptance and more appreciation. So when I do have a conversation with my brother who's a doctor, I'm not trying to battle back and forth about him. I'm saying, hey, in these 20 minutes we have, let's see where we can build. My mother, her religion is very separating to my views of life. And I'm like, you know what? How I used to battle her and try to prove her every way that she was not in alignment. And now when we talk, hey, she like share a passage for me. What'd you do in church today? I've learned to, be a lot more humble and open my heart a little bit more. But the sad thing is that I don't call my mother every single week. I don't call my mother every single day. It's maybe a once every 2 week type of thing, because it's like my soul doesn't get fed from those relationships, but it's my mother, it's my father. So part of that is the light that came from that is the love I give to my son is 100 times more on the emotional level than what my parents gave to me. But I'm grateful for how they raised me, because it now helps us continue this generation of our family bloodline and experiencing a way of love that maybe they weren't able to have based upon their upbringing and their own traumas. So that is why I say the shadow that's everlasting, but I'm definitely grateful and appreciative, because it teaches me more how to be a better man. So
wow. Oh, two beautiful stories. Thank you so much. What a beautiful, powerful way to end this conversation. I am so deeply grateful for the two of you, for the work that you're doing every single day. And we got to do this again. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.